Allie Zendrian, founder of AtoZ Communications, and this is the Brand Stories podcast. I use this as an opportunity to discuss all the different facets of branding. On this episode, we have Sherry Goldman, the head of Goldman PR. She's been in the business for more than 25 years now, and in addition to that, is a professor of public relations. In our wide-ranging conversation, we discussed everything from how PR has evolved and where it's heading, given how the next generation consumes their news. Hi, Sherry. Thank you so much for joining the Brand Stories podcast. It was so kind of you to have me on your podcast, and now I see what you can tell us about branding.
Well, thank you to have you on my show. Let's talk PR more, and thanks for having me here today.
Of course. So first question that I ask everybody is what their favorite brand is and why.
I don't know if it's my favorite brand, but I think a brand that's done an amazing job is Apple. I think when you think about Apple and when it first started, it was a computer, pretty much commoditized, and then a phone. But they created an essence and an aura around a simple technology. I mean, from their white box. But I think it's more than that. It's the essence, the aura. They were the first ones to have a store that you went into. And it wasn't a store where you can go and buy product off the shelf. And retailers take the least amount of space possible because you don't want to pay for it. No, they had the biggest, most expansive stores that you just got to go in and play with everything. And then people walked around in T-shirts and said, "Can I help you?" So it was an experience. And I think that's what people started buying, was that experience. So they knew right off the bat, we have a good product, but how are we going to differentiate ourselves? And I think that was so smart. And of course, then the legacy continued. And what that meant is probably people were willing to pay more because there was a cachet to the brand. There was an experience to the brand. Every product that they brought out built on that brand.
Yeah, exactly.
That was revolutionary when they first started. Even their commercials that are advertising, and I'm in PR, but they don't talk about the product. They talk about the experience. It's a feeling. It's a sense. You want to be a part of that club. You don't really want to go in and go, I have a Samsung, even though Samsung's a great product.
Exactly. And that's a very good point. Obviously, it's working because I feel like anytime, the few times that I am in the mall, the Apple store is crowded. I mean, everybody is up in there.
And you could go in there if you want to go stand around and play for 2 hours, knock your socks off. They will let you. What they're doing is almost enfranchising you to become part of that club. And once you're part of the club, it's like a cult. You're in. People who love Apple, for the most part, would never consider a PC or an Android.
Yeah. So to back up a little bit, Sherry, if you could describe how you got into PR. I know that we sort of have similar jumps, which was interesting, and the kind of work that you do.
We did. We have similar backgrounds because we both started as journalists. Which I think is a fabulous foundation for doing PR, and I know you do too. I started as a journalist. I worked in television news at Channel 2 News, the assignment desk, did freelance work for World News Tonight, Fox 5, all of that. It was hard to get a full-time job in that thing, but I was a fabulous writer, so I went into trade journalism, and I was an editor on various trade journals, National Jeweler, Sporting Goods Business, for about 4 years. And then a PR contact of mine, he was representing DuPont, and I was the fashion editor of Sporting Goods Business. We covered all the fabrics they use for sneakers and backpacks and everything. Said he knew a PR agency that was looking to hire somebody who knew fashion and sports, fashion editor of Sporting Goods Business, and a true sports junkie, and was willing to teach PR because I really didn't know PR. So I jumped over, and it paid $1,000 more than journalism. So what more can you ask for? And that was G.S. Schwartz and Company. Kind of never looked back. I mean, my first client for Johnson & Johnson, they had a handicapped runner who was using their bandage between his stump and prosthesis running across the country to talk about disabled people being able to do things, and a woman who did seasonal color theory. So those are the two clients. But then I launched the Raggedy Ann balloon in the Thanksgiving Day Parade in Orangina Soda in North America. and worked there in a lot of consumer products, and then went over to Reuter Finn, where I did more consumer environmental programs. I ran the country's largest organized cleanup and recycling program for GLAAD and Keep America Beautiful, called the GLAAD Bagathon, for 7 years, and won awards from the U.S. Department of the Interior and Take Pride. And did their automotive side, STP Presto and Simonized car racing and car care. I launched antifreeze recycling in North America and residential recycling in North America, and launched Green Steel. Won my first silver anvil for that. So did a lot of tremendous, fabulous work. Went over to Roland for a while, and then I think I always had the entrepreneurial bug, but I wasn't ready to jump yet. But went in and started my own agency, which will be 28 years this summer. I don't know where the time went.
Exactly, right? Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's a lot of success packed into one career.
Yeah, lots of highs and lows and ups and downs, and we've been fortunate enough to still be here and work with some fabulous clients, including the Writers Guild of America East, the labor union for TV and film writers, which we worked for many years, and won a second silver anvil for that. For Municipal Credit Union, we work for a lot of nonprofits and small and mid-sized businesses. And I love helping businesses and organizations kind of position themselves and really get their stories heard by the people they need to. You feel like a part of their growth and their process, and I so love it.
Good. So I think you started to answer my next question, but it was going to be how you feel like PR feeds into or is part of branding. How do you feel like the two go together?
Well, branding in essence is what you say, what a brand says about itself. And reputation is what others think about you. So ideally, in a perfect world, you want the brand to equal your reputation. And PR really manages that reputation. So the brand can have all their great branding, whether it's logos or design or slogans or concepts or things like that. But if that story is not resonating with target audiences, if that story is not impactful, if that story is not heard, then it doesn't matter. So I think PR really supports branding. Ideally, they should come at the same time, but very often, in PR, we get a client and the client is a brand, or the client has established themselves and they're like, please, we want everybody to know about us. So we're the best kept secret in town or whatever. So I think PR is the messenger for that brand.
I love that. That's a great way to describe it. Because you're right. To your point, you could have the most beautiful logo, a great website, blah, blah, blah. But if nobody's heard of you for whatever reason, then all the aesthetics and whatnot doesn't really matter.
Or if they don't believe it. I mean, you say you have the best product. Is it really the best product? You say you have the best customer service. Is it? Are you saying that, but are 6 of your competitors also saying the same thing? So what are you doing to differentiate yourself? Because very few people, companies, organizations, products, are the only one in their marketplace.
Yeah. So as far as how you advise clients, or if you have anybody a prospect who approaches you and says, I have XYZ bucket for marketing and PR and branding and communications, how should I dole it out? How do you explain to them the importance of PR and how much of a part of the pie we should be?
Listen, I think PR should always be the pie, but that's something else, because PR is everything. Right. PR encompasses earned media. PR encompasses social media. PR encompasses activations and engagement and community relations and internal communication. So PR is not just publicity. It's the broadest sense. So PR encompasses everything. But that being said, the first thing I always say to a client or prospective client is, what do you want to achieve? I want to know what they've done up until now, and I want to know what their goals are. Because then we can better develop a program for them to meet what their goals are. Not every client needs everything. Not every client needs everything at the same time. Sometimes clients have to take a few steps back and go, let's start again with your messaging or your strategy, because maybe what your expectations are either are not realistic or not realistic in this time frame, but how can we take steps to get you there?
So looking at your career, what do you feel some of the biggest lessons are that you learned that you might want to pass on to other brands so that they can benefit from your knowledge?
Brands or people, listen, we're all going to make mistakes, right? We're all going to learn. I would say sometimes take baby steps. I think some brands, and I know even when I pitch stories, you want to go out there with your pitch, but let's get some feedback from a couple of journalists before we take it out to all of them, or the one you really want to have. Let's test it to make sure. Let's get some outside perspective. I think a lot of problem with brands, especially if they have internal PR people doing it as versus external, or the outside counselors, is sometimes a little bit of objectivity goes a long way. And I've seen this with clients, and sometimes I'll say to my client, blame it on me, because they've got to tell their boss or their board something that they don't think it's a good idea, and they're hep on doing it. When you're a paid employee, I said, blame it on me. Say my perspective is, and here's why. Because sometimes I think we get too close to something and we can not see the forest through the trees, or whatever that adage is. So objectivity is tough. It is important. And I think that's really important for brands and organizations when you say, what should you learn? Learn that you need to be objective. A little bit of tough love goes a long way. And the other thing is, sometimes you know what your end game is. We all want to know what our end game is. But let's take some baby steps, because we're going to change in that process too. So you want to be able to constantly tweak and do things, because who you are now is not who is a brand you're going to be in 6 months, probably. Yeah. So take the learning that you get from consumers and media and business associates and industry, and see how you can mesh that into the program, the marketing, the PR, the whole integrated communications program you're doing to move that forward.
That's a very good point. And I love what you were saying about tough love, because I think that is some of the best value that we can give to clients, is that counsel to even say sometimes, I don't think that you should do that interview. I can see this way and this way and this way that's going to bite you in the butt. Please don't do it.
Or sometimes, I don't know about you, have to tell clients, that's a great story. It's not a story earned media is going to cover. That's a great story that you need to tell on your social channels, on your own channels, on your website, through your e-newsletter. Those are stories and news that you need to tell, but that's not a story or a piece of news that the media is going to tell for you, because it doesn't necessarily it's not as newsworthy. It's not going to benefit their readers.
So how do you guide clients to understand what's newsworthy? Which actually I think was among the questions that you asked me. So I'm firing it right back. But especially since you mentioned it, I think it is hard. The client says, I just launched a new website, and you want to say, like, yes, good for you, and that's wonderful, but nobody cares.
So what makes something newsworthy when the media is evaluating it is, do their audiences care? Because the media is your gatekeeper to whoever their readers, their viewers are. So let's say you're pitching Newsday. Newsday is going to go, my readers, all of Long Island, doesn't care that you have a new website. Not really important. But your consumers should know, your industry should know. What might Newsday care about? Does the new website offer something? They're not going to care about a website. Or say some functionality, but that's not important. They are not there to help you reach those people. They're there to educate their audiences about something they think is of value to them.
Absolutely.
So why sometimes, and I know you mentioned on my show, two companies merging. Sometimes it's news and sometimes it's not. And the only reason the media would think it's news is if it impacts the industry. Say they went from 2 number 10s in the industry to now being the second largest in the industry. That changes the dynamics in the industry. Let's say you're talking local media. Well, if they're merging and they're laying off 300 people, that impacts the community. That becomes news. But just in general, not newsworthy. But again, news you should tell to your target audiences yourself. That's where your social media comes into play. That's where your own media, your website, your newsletters, your e-blast, that don't always rely on earned media, but earned media is fabulous if you can get it.
Absolutely. So among the great things that you do is you're also a professor of PR. As you're seeing this next generation coming up, is there anything different that you're noticing about them, or have any outlook as far as the future of PR?
Totally different. And yes, I teach PR on the undergraduate level at the City College of New York, part of CUNY. And interesting to me, it is a very different generation. This is the generation that gets their information that's pushed to them, whereas we read newspapers and we watch TV. They get things pushed to them. They find out what's going on from social media. And one of the things I tell them is you have to be a creature of culture and current events, and why it's important to know what's going on. And the answer is most of them don't know. So we have to talk about how to follow those people on TikTok. and put them in your feed or in Instagram, because they're not necessarily reading the New York Times, even though they have a digital subscription. So whereas I would flip through the paper and see something, they're not. But it's not okay not to know. So they're getting their information from social. So we have to teach them and stress the importance of, in addition to what the algorithm sends you, because the algorithm is buying you based upon your shopping habits or your this, you need to choose what you're getting. So when you're dead scrolling for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours, which they do, and they laugh when I say that, is that something might pass your eye that you go, oh, I should know that. And you need to be aware. So they're a different generation in that sense of how they get their information, which I think in some ways has impacted PR when you talk about brands looking to reach younger audiences, because they're not as focused on earned media, the publicity. The same way, because those audiences are not necessarily watching. I did say to my students recently, who watches TV? Because I was teaching the broadcast TV, they're teaching national and local and cable when you're pitching news. And one of my students said, yes. And I said, what do you watch? And she says, Netflix. And I said, that's not TV. But the answer is, it brought something in. They watch it on a TV. They don't know the difference between Fox 5 and Fox Cable, because it comes through the same TV box. They are not the generations that had the rabbit ears. Everything comes through cable, so they don't know the difference between cable news and national news. So it's very different.
Yeah. So what do you think then? I'm curious, and obviously we'll see with this upcoming generation, but it seems like among the powers of PR is that it's that social proof that once you've been featured in a news day, you're validated, basically. You're not just a nobody. Do you think then, does PR sort of transform and it's less about the social proof, or it just sort of evolves?
Well, I think that's still important. And the key is, but everybody may not see Newsday. So how are you leveraging Newsday? Where are you sharing it? But interestingly enough, the younger generations, their Newsday are influencers. So whereas journalists were the influencers that we, in essence, respected and followed, and their validation, their third-party endorsement was so important to us. For this younger generation, it's influencers, which does shift the model from earned to paid and pitched to bought. But influencers have a tremendous impact on not only their purchasing habits, but how they think, what they're interested in, what they focus on, what they deem to be important.
Which I'm curious how that's going to go, because on the one hand, and not to say that I don't follow or pay attention to certain influencers, there are definitely people on Facebook that I enjoy just watching, but it makes you wonder then if they'll follow that path down until one day it fails them and the influencer is a fraud or whatever it is. And then they'll kind of seek that validation or the following up for a study afterwards. But we'll see what happens.
No idea. I think in that sense it's in its infancy. But I do know that if they go down that path and it doesn't work, I don't think they're going to turn to what we consider traditional media, because they haven't grown up on it.
That's a very good point.
And listen, we're in New York. We have lots of newspapers, but there are lots of cities around the country that don't even have print papers. I think New Orleans is one where their daily newspaper is now only digital. So it's a different, I still get newspapers delivered to my front door. I'm the dinosaur.
No, I still read paper books. I think it's so much better for your eyes than reading off a computer. But anyway, so as far as why someone would select to work with you, what do you feel like about your PR practice that differentiates you from any of the other ones in the New York area or otherwise?
Right. No, but I do think I'm definitely involved in all the clients that we work with. I have a team to help me. Sometimes it's just me. But I think it's that perspective that really is, I'm not looking for a quick in and out. I'm there to really understand their business. I come with the sensibilities from a journalist to know what makes news, and then really understand their target audiences. So we have a real structure and a foundation that's aimed for success. And listen, if I only succeed if my clients succeed. So there's a real commitment to wanting to be part of their teams, to real passion and commitment. And I think that's what differentiates me from many.
Well, and obviously it's working because it's been working for more than 25 years. So you keep going.
Thanks.
Last question, for any brands who might be listening to this or just otherwise thinking about it, what would you say if they feel like they're not in the ideal place, how they could make some steps to do a little better?
I think you have to take a step back and do self-introspection. I think, what is your brand about? And I'll say this, I go to a lot of business networking groups and everybody goes around the table and talks and they're all like, we're good at customer service. And I once said, okay, close your eyes. And I read all their, elevator pitches and they were all the same. And you couldn't tell the accountant from the lawyer because everybody was like, we're in it to help your customer. So I think from a brand standpoint or an organization or person, really take a step back and see what makes you different. Yes, you're aiming to serve the public. Yes, you're aiming to have a product that answers a problem, all of that. But really try and be authentic and take a step back and say, what about us is important? What about us? What do we do? And what does that accomplish? What does that help? What problem does that solve? And then really look at who that's best going to match with. I mean, every organization or brand wants to reach everybody, but there is no audience of everybody. And you're not going to be successful if you go out with one message or one brand for everybody.
That's very
So really
good advice.
take a step back and let's find the niches within that everybody to target. And then where are they? What's important to them? But it's a holistic, long-term process. I don't think it's as quickly as we'll change our logo. That would do that. Or we're going to launch and everybody will know about us. And be authentic. One of the things, I'll go back to Apple at the beginning, it certainly was out of the box, but they were authentic and they stuck with it. And they had a commitment and it worked.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom with us and much continued success to you and your team.
Thank you for having me. It's been great, Alexandra. Thank you so much.